Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine Europe in the late 15th century. The world is bound by horse-drawn carts, candlelight, and sails carried by the wind. Human flight, impossible, a fantasy belonging only to gods, angels, or mythical creatures. But among the dusty streets of Florence, a restless genius was sketching a future that no one else could even imagine. His name, Leonardo da Vinci. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the channel where history's greatest secrets come alive and forgotten visions return to astonish the modern world. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon, because today's journey will take you into the mind of a man centuries ahead of his time. A man who dared to dream of conquering the skies long before machines roared through the clouds. Leonardo was not just a painter of masterpieces like the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. He was not just a sculptor, an architect, or a thinker. He was a man who gazed at birds soaring in the blue sky and whispered to himself, "If nature allows them to fly, why not us?" For Leonardo, flight was not a dream, it was a challenge. A mystery to be solved with mathematics, observation, and invention. He filled his notebooks with thousands of sketches, diagrams of machines that looked more like visions from the future than drawings from the Renaissance. Strange wings powered by human muscles. Giant screws meant to twist the air itself. Gliders shaped to ride the wind. But here's the suspense. For centuries, these notebooks remained hidden, locked away. Few ever saw them. The world never knew that while Europe was obsessed with kings, wars, and empires, Leonardo was quietly drafting the blueprint for modern aviation. Now imagine this. A candle flickers in a dim workshop. Papers are scattered across a wooden desk. Leonardo bends over them, his quill scratching furiously as he sketches yet another design. Outside, the world sleeps, but inside, a revolution is being born. He watches the flutter of a bird's wings, dissects bats to study their structure, and writes cryptic notes in mirrored handwriting, as if protecting his secrets from prying eyes. Centuries later, when his notebooks were finally discovered, the world was stunned. Within those fragile pages lay the foundations of helicopters, airplanes, and parachutes. Leonardo had dreamed of them 400 years before humanity even learned to lift off the ground. This is where our journey begins. Now, we will dive deep into these forgotten machines of flight. The ornithopter, the aerial screw, the parachute, and gliders that echoed the design of modern aircraft will reveal the brilliance, the flaws, and the breathtaking vision of a man who saw the sky not as a limit, but as destiny. So stay with us, because the story of Leonardo's flying machines is not just the story of inventions. It is the story of human imagination itself. And if you are ready to witness how one man's 15th century dreams became the stepping stones for 20th century aviation, then buckle up, the flight has just begun. The year is 1485. In the rolling hills of Italy, Leonardo da Vinci walks alone, gazing upward at the sky. Above him, a hawk glides effortlessly, riding invisible currents of air. Its wings beat only occasionally, yet it soars higher and higher with a grace that defies gravity. To most, it is a beautiful sight. To Leonardo, it is a puzzle demanding to be solved. How do birds fly? What secrets do their wings hold? And could mankind ever imitate them? This obsession gave birth to Leonardo's most iconic flying design, the ornithopter. The word itself comes from Greek ornithos, meaning bird, and pteron, meaning wing. Leonardo envisioned a machine that could allow a man to fly by flapping giant wings, just as birds do. In his sketches, we see it clearly. A wooden frame, stretched with silk or linen, and wings designed to move up and down with human effort. The pilot would lie on his stomach, arms and legs connected to pulleys and levers, flapping the wings in rhythm with his own body. It was more than just an invention. It was an act of faith, faith in human potential, in the power of imagination. But here's the dramatic truth. The ornithopter, no matter how beautiful, was doomed to fail. Why? Because human muscles are simply too weak to generate the lift required for such massive wings. Birds have hollow bones and powerful chest muscles built for flight. Humans do not. And yet, Leonardo's genius was not wasted. Even in failure, he succeeded. His detailed notes reveal a mind trying to understand the principles of lift, thrust, and drag, the very forces that modern engineers would later use to create airplanes. He may not have cracked the code of flight, but he had already defined the problem. Think of the courage this required. In a world dominated by superstition, where flying too close to the sun was considered a myth from Greek tragedy, Leonardo dared to believe mankind could conquer the heavens. His ornithopter was less a machine and more a manifesto, a declaration that the sky was not just for angels and birds, but for men as well. Centuries later, aviation pioneers would look back and marvel at Leonardo's foresight. The Wright brothers, when they built their first plane in 1903, were essentially solving the same puzzle Leonardo had identified: how to control lift and propulsion. Their machine was powered not by flapping wings, but by an engine-driven propeller. Still, the dream was the same. In a way, Leonardo's ornithopter was like a spark in the darkness. It could not light the whole path, but it showed that there was a path. Without it, perhaps the dream of flight would have taken even longer to materialize. And let's not forget the artistry. Leonardo's sketches of the ornithopter are not crude technical drawings. They are works of beauty, curved wings, elegant lines, a sense of life, almost breathing on the page. They remind us that invention is not only about practicality, it is also about vision, about daring to dream beyond the horizon. Picture Leonardo hunched over his notebook, carefully drawing the wings of his ornithopter by candlelight. Outside, the night is silent. Inside, the future hums quietly, waiting to take shape. The ornithopter may never have flown, but its wings carried humanity a little closer to the skies. If the ornithopter was Leonardo da Vinci's ode to the elegance of birds, then the aerial screw was his leap into the future, a design so ahead of its time that modern engineers would later call it the ancestor of the helicopter. Imagine a giant screw, not made of metal, but of wood, reeds, and starched linen. Its frame stretched over 13 feet in diameter, coiling upward in a spiral. Leonardo's notes describe it with precision. If this instrument, made with a screw, be well made, being turned swiftly, the said screw will make it spiral in the air, and it will rise up. This was the birth of the helicopter, centuries before engines, before combustion, before the science of aerodynamics was even understood. Leonardo believed that just as a screw can penetrate wood, a spiral design might screw its way into the air. By turning fast enough, he theorized, the aerial screw would push against the air and lift off the ground. The idea was radical, audacious, almost impossible to conceive in the 15th century. But could it work? Here lies the drama. Not in Leonardo's time. Without lightweight engines or modern materials, the aerial screw could never achieve flight. Human power alone was far too weak to spin it fast enough. In truth, if someone had tried, the contraption would have wobbled, strained, and collapsed under its own weight. And yet, the brilliance of the design cannot be denied. Leonardo had grasped the principle of rotary wing flight, the very same principle that makes helicopters soar today. He was centuries early, dreaming of rotor blades long before Igor Sikorsky built the first successful helicopter in the 20th century. Think of the courage in that vision. In a world where no one had left the Earth except in imagination, Leonardo dared to believe that a spiral machine could rise into the sky. He wasn't copying nature this time. He was inventing something entirely new. The aerial screw also reveals something profound about Leonardo's mind. He understood that flight didn't always need to imitate birds. Instead, it could follow its own laws waiting to be discovered. In this way, he bridged the gap between imitation and innovation. Centuries later, engineers would marvel at his sketches. In the early 20th century, as aviation blossomed, inventors tested models of Leonardo's aerial screw. Some small-scale recreations actually did achieve brief, unstable lift, not enough for practical flight, but enough to prove the idea wasn't pure fantasy. And here is where the suspense deepens. Imagine if Leonardo had access to modern materials, aluminum, lightweight engines, carbon fiber. Would we have had helicopters, not in 1939, but in 1490? The thought alone is staggering. Yet perhaps the true gift of the aerial screw was not its practicality, but its audacity. It showed the world that flight could be reimagined, not just as wings flapping in the sky, but as machines bending the air itself to human will. Picture Leonardo at his desk once more, sketching the spiral of his aerial screw. Outside, peasants plow fields, merchants sell wares, soldiers prepare for war. None could possibly understand the vision unfolding on that parchment, a vision that would wait 400 years to come alive. The aerial screw never flew, but it planted the seed of an idea that would one day roar across the sky with the beating blades of helicopters, carrying men and women into the clouds. And that, perhaps, is the truest kind of genius, to dream so far ahead that the world takes centuries to catch up. By now, we've seen Leonardo da Vinci dream of wings that flap like birds and screws that spiral into the air. But his imagination didn't stop there. His notebooks reveal a treasure trove of other flying contraptions, ideas so daring they would not be tested until centuries later. One of the most remarkable is the parachute. In a simple sketch, Leonardo drew a pyramid-shaped canopy, wide at the base, tapering to a point at the top, with a man dangling beneath it. His notes read, "If a man have a tent made of linen, of which the apertures have all been stopped up, and it be 12 braccia across and 12 in depth, he will be able to throw himself down from any great height without injury." 400 years before the modern parachute was built, Leonardo had imagined it. Skeptics dismissed it for centuries as nothing more than fantasy. But in the year 2000, a British daredevil named Adrian Nicholas decided to put Leonardo's design to the test. He built a parachute exactly as Da Vinci described, a wooden frame covered in canvas, heavy and awkward compared to modern parachutes. Then, he leaped from a hot air balloon. To the astonishment of all, Leonardo's parachute worked. it slowed Nicholas's fall, just as the Renaissance master predicted. Only after drifting safely down did Nicholas cut away and deploy a modern chute for landing. Think about that. A design sketched in 1485 proved functional in the year 2000. 5 centuries later, Leonardo's genius still refused to be doubted. But parachutes were only the beginning. Leonardo also envisioned gliders, machines shaped to ride the currents of air, much like the wings of bats. His sketches show wide, fixed wings and structures resembling modern hang gliders. Although he lacked the science of lift, his intuition was astonishingly close. He studied air resistance, observed the motion of wind, and even suggested controlling flight by shifting the pilot's weight, the same principle used in modern gliders. And then there were his smaller marvels. He designed devices to test how air flows over surfaces. He studied how birds tilt their wings to turn and slow their descent. He even imagined a kind of early landing gear, suggesting ways for a machine to safely touch the ground. Of course, none of these machines ever flew in Leonardo's lifetime. They remained ink on parchment, locked away, forgotten by the world. But in those delicate pages lay the DNA of modern aviation. It's almost eerie to think about. Leonardo died in 1519, believing his flying machines had failed. He could not have known that centuries later, engineers would find themselves returning to his notebooks, amazed at how much he had already envisioned. What makes this even more haunting is the suspense of what might have been. Imagine if Leonardo's patrons had supported his flight experiments the way they supported his paintings. Imagine if instead of dusty sketches, he had been given the resources to build prototypes, to test, to fail, and to try again. Would mankind have taken to the skies not in the 20th century, but in the 16th? In his gliders, his parachute, and his countless other designs, we see not just a man of science, but a man of vision, a man unwilling to accept the limits of his age. For Leonardo, the sky was not forbidden. It was an unfinished chapter in the story of humanity, a chapter he was determined to write, even if the world wasn't ready to read it. And so, his parachutes and gliders remained silent for centuries, waiting for the day when men would finally build them. When that day came, the world realized Leonardo had been right all along. We have walked with Leonardo through the candlelit rooms of Florence, watched him sketch wings of silk and screws of wood, and witnessed the brilliance of his parachutes and gliders. When Leonardo da Vinci died in 1519, he carried with him a lifetime of visions that few had ever seen. His notebooks, crammed with sketches and notes written in his famous mirror handwriting, were scattered, hidden, and forgotten. For centuries, the world celebrated him as an artist, but overlooked him as a dreamer of flight. It would take hundreds of years before his machines were rediscovered, fragile paper blueprints of a future not yet born. By the time the Wright brothers launched their first successful flight in 1903, Leonardo's designs were already over 400 years old. And yet, if you look closely, you see his fingerprints everywhere. The Wrights solved the problem of propulsion with engines, but their focus on balance, control, and lift echoed the very questions Leonardo had asked. Helicopters. The concept of rotary blades had been born in Leonardo's aerial screw. Parachutes, tested and proven from his sketches. Gliders. His early experiments mirrored the principles of modern hang gliding. He had not built the machines that would soar, but he had dreamed them. And sometimes, dreaming is the most important invention of all. This is the paradox of Leonardo's genius. His machines were impossible in his own lifetime, yet they became inevitable in ours. He did not have engines, lightweight materials, or the science of aerodynamics. But he had imagination, an imagination so powerful that it leaped across centuries to inspire those who finally made flight a reality. And perhaps that is his greatest legacy, not the machines themselves, but the courage to dream of them. Think about it. In a world bound by superstition, where the sky belonged only to angels and myths, Leonardo dared to say, "No, the sky belongs to us, too." He did not see the heavens as forbidden, but as destiny. Even today, engineers and scientists study his notebooks with awe. They see in his sketches not just drawings, but a philosophy, the belief that nature holds secrets waiting to be unlocked, and that curiosity is the key to every door. In many ways, Leonardo da Vinci was not only the father of modern flight, but the father of modern science itself. And so, as planes streak across the skies above us, as helicopters hover with precision, as parachutes bloom open in the air, we are reminded of a man who saw it all, centuries before we were ready. Dear viewers, this has been the story of Leonardo da Vinci's flying machines, the dreams that defied gravity, the visions that became reality, and the imagination that proved timeless. If you enjoyed this journey into history's most fascinating inventions, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit that bell icon, and share this video with those who believe in the power of human imagination. Because here, we don't just tell stories, we unlock the mysteries of the past, the dreams that shaped our present, and the visions that will inspire our future. And as you look to the sky tonight, remember, long before the roar of engines, long before wings of steel, there was a man with a notebook, a quill, and a dream. His name was Leonardo da Vinci, and his dream was flight.